Hey, I'm Lauren from tastypc.tv, and today we're doing a review of Asus's Maximus VI Impact motherboard, and this is Republic of Gamers' first ever Mini-ITX board, and I'm just going to jump straight in. Before I take a look at the motherboard itself, I did want to take a really quick look at the box and go over some of the accessories. And I have to say that even though I've had the ROG Impact for quite some time now, and like I've already done all the testing and stuff that I wanted to do for the review, so therefore it's kind of worn off on me a little bit. Not only is the ROG Impact an incredibly cute motherboard, but it's a really cute product too. I mean, even the box is so like small and cute. It's just like, oh, it's cute. But opening the flap, we've got a list of features, all of which I will cover. Oh, go in somewhere there. While we're looking at the board itself. However, I am going to kind of, I suppose, point some out now. So with the motherboard, you do get a user guide. You also get a disc, which obviously comes with the drivers, utilities such as Game First and RAM disk, which is where you can reserve some of your memory to access really fast storage, and also software like Demon Tools Pro and Kaspersky. And you also get this really nice Republic of Gamers badge. Like, I am a sucker for anything like this. It's really nice. Like, anything that comes with a sticker or a badge, I want it. And I actually imagine it make a pretty awesome guitar pick, or I presume anyway. But onto the motherboard itself, if we start with the CPU, now obviously this is a houseware board, meaning that it uses an Intel LGA 1150 socket. Being a Mini-ITX board, obviously you are going to have issues with the clearance of certain CPU coolers, but I'd imagine the majority of you knew that already. But Asus have provided you with full washers just in case you do have any issues with fitting certain backplates. Maybe you're not getting as much pressure as you like. But here we do have two dual DDR3 memory slots, which can support up to maximum 16 gig. We've got a single PCIe 3x16 slot, which is unlocked, which, you know, is needed with this board because when you've got your graphics card, your memory and everything plugged in, it'd be really difficult to get your finger in there. Now obviously the issue that Mini-ITX boards have, and the reason why a lot of people who want small form factor rigs go for micro ATX boards rather than Mini-ITX boards, is that they want to be able to have both a sound card and a graphics card. And with a Mini-ITX board, obviously you can't do that. So what Asus have done to try and kind of combat that is they've taken the isolated Supreme FX bit off of their Asus Maximus VI formula, and they've redesigned it and changed it to fit onto its own PCB to be able to slot onto the motherboard. And obviously this just gives you much better onboard audio quality than you expect to get on a Mini-ITX board without taking up any of the much needed space on the main PCB. Because just like with the Maximus VI formula, you've got your high quality Japanese ENLA caps, you've got your Super FX shielding to help reduce electromagnetic interference, you know, etc, etc. Although it's worth mentioning that this has been more designed for, you know, like headsets and headphones. It's only got one audio out and doesn't offer all the ports you'd find on higher end sound cards. But one cool thing that you can do is that if you've got it plugged in, you've got speakers plugged into it, and then for example your phone plugged into the audio jacks at the front of your case, even with the computer turned off, it will amplify and play through the speakers, which is pretty cool. So underneath where the Supreme FX card sits, so you've got to kind of switch between which one you want to use, you've got these Pro-bit multimeter voltage readout points. And these were pretty helpful for my review, which I'll cover in the conclusion. But I think the fact that Asus have made the effort to put these onto a Mini-ITX board so full to the point where they had to mount the brass battery vertically just shows you know how well they were expecting this board to overclock, the fact they were expecting professionals to use it, and I do know that this board has won world records. And really that's all down to this Impact Power daughter PCB, which they've taken the same kind of VRM design of the Digi Plus 3, I think it's called, off of their Asus Maximus VI formula, and redesigned it and changed it to fit onto its own PCB to sit on the top of the card. And really this is supposed to give you the same kind of precision and control that you'd have with full-size ATX boards rather than what you'd expect from a Mini-ITX board. And I have actually for this review tested this board against a full-size Gigabyte ATX board, and I will tell you in the conclusion how well this does in overclocking in comparison. So here we've got an LN2 jumper and a fast boot jumper. Now if you're overclocking with LN2 and you've got the cold bug, then you know obviously you can enable that and it push through it. If you want to boot into Windows real fast, you can just enable the fast boot jumper. But here we've got 3 fan headers, this one being the CPU fan header, and a 4th over here. 4 will be enough for some people, not enough for others, so you may have to use splitters or a fan controller, or just run the fans off with your power supply. Here we've got a USB 3 connector, and the 24 pin connector and the 12 volt 8 pin connector. We've got a start and restart button, which is great if you're going to be overclocking with it and you've got like on a test bench or something. And then we've got the front panel headers. Now this one is the DRCT panel header, which if you plug a button into it, does the same as the direct key button at the back, which I'll talk about when we're looking at the RIO. we've got the front panel audio jack header, which you can use if you're not going to be using the Supreme FX card. And then you've got the rest of the front panel headers here, like, you know, the on button, the power LED, etc. And what Asus have given you for that is an extension, which is pretty nice, because when you're using a Mini-ITX board and, you know, you've got your graphics card plugged in, your memory plugged in, and everything else plugged in, if you try and plug these in last, it can be very fiddly to try and get in there. So with this, you can just, you know, plug them easily straight into these headers here. My only issue with this is maybe that Asus could have done something to make it look a little bit nicer, but I suppose that with a Mini-ITX board, obviously with a Mini-ITX build, you're not really going to be seeing the board or the cables, etc. As much as you would with a full-size ATX ROG, so I suppose you can kind of let them off for that. Here we've got 4 SATA 6 gigabit per second connectors, and Asus have given you 4 SATA 6 gigabit per second cables, so you have to buy more. And these are black, which is nice, and they've all got straight ends. I should probably mention this Motherboard supports RAID. You also get stickers, just so that you can keep a note of what's in your hard drives or solid state drives or optical drives if you're that way inclined. Here we've got 2 headers for ROG's overclocking extension controller, which is bundled with the Asus Maximus VI Extreme, and it's obviously being sold separately. I don't know if it is yet though, which just allows you to monitor your fan speeds and do real-time on-the-fly overclocking. This one here is the USB 2 header, and then here is the TPM header, which is your trusted platform module, which just allows you to save passwords and stuff on it. And then lastly, we've got a mini PCIe 2x1 slot, which has been designed for this mini PCIe Combo 2 expansion card, which has got an inbuilt AC Wi-Fi module, an inbuilt Bluetooth V4 module, and an M2 socket for a next generation form factor solid state drive, which is the replacement for mSATA and mPCIe, which is great from a future-proofing point of view. Although obviously if you are currently using an mSATA solid state drive and you're looking to upgrade to this motherboard, then unfortunately you won't be able to use the mSATA solid state drive in the M2 socket for obvious reasons. But with this you do also get a 2T2R Wi-Fi antenna, which you can just twist. So then with the rear I/O ports, you've got an optical out, HDMI and display port, Q-code LED display readout, which I actually really love is mounted here, because even though you've got QLEDs kind of hidden between memory slots and the 24-pin connector, with the motherboard in a case, you're really going to struggle to kind of get in and see that. Whereas like this, you can just look at the back of your ROG, it's easy to see. You've got your direct key button, which does the same as the DRCT header if you put a button on it, where if you want to get to your BIOS, rather than having to restart the computer and spamming the delete key, just press that. You've got the memory K button, where if you've got a problem with memory stopping from able to boot, that just resets it. You've got the clear CMOS and ROG Connect buttons. You've got 4 USB 2 headers, the bottom one doing ROG Connect, USB Charger Plus and USB Pass Flashback. But these are features that ROG have had for so long now, I don't really feel the need to cover. But you've got an eSATA connector, 4 USB 3 connectors, and the Intel Gigabit LAN port. If you've got the Supreme FX card in, you've got 3 audio ports, and this is just what it looks like with the Combo 2 expansion card in. So we then got the rear I/O shield, which is spongy, and I really love this spongy. It's definitely a bonus. Although if you do have the expansion card fitted, you've got a little hole to screw it into the shield. I should mention that the screw for that and the screw for kind of securing these to the motherboard, it all come with the motherboard. You do also have these little notches here for cable management, where you can just slot that in like that, which is pretty cool, I think. So moving on to the conclusion, firstly I do want to apologise for the kind of rushed overview, quick look feel of this review, but one thing that I wanted to make sure that I definitely did cover in detail was how well this board overclocks, seeing as it's got the Impact Power Digi Plus 3 design daughter PCB, and then see how that compares to a full-size ATX motherboard. So I wanted to see what faults it took to be stable at 4.3 GHz, then 4.6 GHz, and then compare that to a Gigabyte Z87X UD3H board. But for all of the tests, I was going to keep the VCCIN or VRIN at 1.8 volts, the Uncore at 39, and the VRIN at 1.1 volts, so that through all of the tests it purely came down to the Uncore, the difference between whether they were stable or not. So starting with the Gigabyte board, I set in the BIOS I set it to 1.310 volts, and according to CPU-Z it was at 1.312 volts. Then I did the same on the Asus board, set it at 1.310 volts, and according to CPU-Z it was at 1.328 volts, which wasn't anywhere near as precise as I would like, and I wasn't actually very happy with it. So I spoke to my Asus contact about it, and he said that the issue with CPU-Z is that it doesn't actually correctly display the volts with the Asus board, and that with the Gigabyte board, it reads just kind of what's written in the BIOS rather than trying to read what the actual voltage is. So he proposed that I get a multimeter and, see for myself if CPU-Z is correct or not. So I did get myself a multimeter, this one, and I redid all of the tests, starting with the Gigabyte board again, and at 1.310 volts, obviously CPU-Z still saying 1.312, it actually got, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, 1.321 volts. And then with the Asus board, obviously with 1.310 volts again, CPU-Z saying 1.328, it got 1.314 volts, meaning that not only was CPU-Z saying that the Gigabyte board was using less volts than it actually was, and the Asus board using more volts than it actually was, but the Asus board was only using 0.004 volts more than I asked, whereas the Gigabyte board was using 0.011 more volts than I wanted, meaning that the Asus board actually had more precision and kind of more control when it came to overclocking than the full-size ATX Gigabyte board, which I was really surprised with because obviously other people who have done reviews on it, they use the software for their results, obviously CPU-Z, and their results did reflect the original results that I got before I did all the tests with the multimeter. So I was actually quite surprised to find that in fact this Mini-ITX Asus board is better in terms of precision than a full-size ATX Gigabyte board. So then I wanted to check obviously the stability, see how much more V-core a board like this would take compared to a full-size ATX Gigabyte board. And at 4.3 GHz, the Asus board took 1.156 V-core and the Gigabyte board 1.150 V-core, and then at 4.6 GHz the Asus was 1.319 and the Gigabyte 1.310. So once again, the difference between the Asus and the Gigabyte board stability is like 0.07. I mean, the Asus board needed almost ever so slightly more to be stable than the Gigabyte board, meaning that it's almost as good. It's pretty much almost as good as with the Gigabyte board. It's like margin of error, and it's more precise. So it is this Mini-ITX board is better overclocking than a full-size ATX Gigabyte board. I wish that I had some other Mini-ITX Intel motherboards to test it against, and that don't have the impact power Digi plus 3 PCB bit just to compare, but unfortunately I don't have any. But I have to say that overclocking using multimeter, this Asus has actually got to be my favourite platform. But on to whether I think this board deserves an award or not, I've got to admit that I really love this board, and if I could choose any board in the whole of existence that's Mini-ITX to use in a Mini-ITX build, it would be that board. And for that reason, I'm going to give it my Tasty Award. Now, normally, because of how expensive it is, coming in at around £200, it would get the Creamy Award, which is like Luxury Extreme, but my Tasty Award is kind of like my Editor's Choice Award, and I love it, and I feel like the board deserves it, to be honest. But that was my review of Asus Maximus VI Impact motherboard. If you liked the video, hit the like button, don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more of my videos, and thanks for watching.